All right, so server-side rendering with Next.js. So if you've ever written PHP or say Python or basically its frameworks like Laravel or Django, right? Where you do something like you have on your controller, you have like a data, you call to your database, get data, right? Then you do a return view, maybe return view hello with this data. So what Laravel or Django does for you in that case is it gets the data, compiles your HTML page, passes the data wherever you've done it, wherever you want it passed, builds the entire page and returns it. So whenever your page loads, your data is already there, everything is loaded at once. That is server-side rendering. While in normal React, for instance, you have a use effect which basically tells it to fire maybe a fetch call or an Axios call when the page is mounted. So the page first mounts, the HTML mounts, CSS mounts basically, then you make a call to a server, get data, then when the data comes, then populates on your page. That one is client-side rendering. So that's the difference basically. So what Next.js comes to do with server-side rendering is achieve what you normally would achieve in PHP, but then in your React app. So basically it's not now making calls or basically important calls on the client. It makes them on the server, builds the page and returns the page itself to you. So when the page loads, your data is already on the page. Now I will show you how it does that. So just let's go into it. So currently what I have here is a React project, a simple React app or a React page, right? Which I just have use effect and I have Axios. Use effect, use state and Axios. I have a type that I defined here for the data I'm expecting. Then basically you just define your data, define your loading state. Then in my use effect I have a get data function that makes a call to this API, gets users, then I set my data to the data I need from the response of the API. Then I call this function here. Yeah, so to show you what's happening there, let's go to the browser, right? So on the browser, basically, let me clear the network tab. So when I reload my page, it shows you loading, meaning it has fired a call to the API. Then when the data comes, just populates on the page. But if you notice, the page is first mounted. That's when you now see that loading state, meaning you have already mounted your page. Then the call to the endpoint is made. And when the data comes, it just populates on your page, like a remount of your page. But then the page is already built and given to you. This is client-side rendering. So in other words, the page first loads, right? Then it tells it, okay, when you load, make this call, right? It then fires this call to the endpoint, which gets the data and it populates on the page. It's like a remount of the page, but then this is what we call client-side rendering, meaning your HTML is already built. Your HTML is built. Then the call to the server is made. After the page is already returned, call to the server is made, then data on the page is changed based on the response you get from the server. This is what we call client-side rendering. Now let me show you how server-side rendering works in Next.js. It is a simple concept of React, which is basically passing props to your page. Now what it does in that case is on the server, which is basically before your page even mounts, it makes a call to the API, gets data, passes it then as props to your page, so that whenever your page mounts, the data is already there. Basically what Laravel achieves. You understand? So let me show you how to achieve that. So here, for instance, you have, this is the normal React app. Let's convert this to a server-side rendering data. This same data that we have here coming from the server in this case. All right, so let's start. So to start, I will define a prop, a page prop. So I will define type props, right? It's equal to this. Then I'm expecting a data of type. Let me use data type here, or let me say on null, right? It could be null data type. Then I'm expecting an error of, let it be a boolean. Let it be a boolean. Right? So this is my props, right? This is my prop definition. So because I'm using Next.js, I need to import the server-side functionality of Next.js into this. All right? So you see me do something like import get server-side props from Next.js. It doesn't end. I also get server-side props context. Then I will get infer get server-side props. Yeah. So if I have these three things, now because I'm converting this to a server-side rendering app, I don't need to use state or use effect anymore, because like I said, you get your data on the server, pass it as props to your page. Have that concept in your mind. So the first thing I have to do now is, where does this data come from? How do I get this data? All right, so I've defined my get server-side props, which is basically the is the function that gets the data from the API, returns it then as a prop to your page, right? So to do the functionality of this function, I can basically just come here and copy this my try and catch block, because I'm making calls to the same endpoint. So I paste this, right? I do a bit of format. Now I don't have data that I'm setting anymore, so the data itself I need, I have to just pick it from here. Now I made a mistake at the top, which is basically that data type. What I'm expecting my API is returning is an array of data types, so I don't even need to return a null. I need to just return an empty array or an array of data types, right? So basically here I will do a return. Remember, I'm returning props, so I'll call props is this, data is this, right? This is what this one returns. Then on my error block, I would return something similar, props, right? Then data, because there's no data, it's an empty array, and here error is true. So this is what I will return on my get server side props, right? So basically what this does is get the data I need, return it as a props to my page. If I get an error, return the error as a prop as well. So on my page I need to be expecting the data that this guy is returning. So in my page I'll do data error type of infer get server side props types, which is a type of get server side props. So basically this is what I have to do. Then, but because now my data is already existing on my page, I have to just remove this one. Now I don't even need to manage the loading states or have data here. Neither do I have to use a use effect to get my data, since my data is already passed here as a prop. Now I don't have a loading state anymore, right? Okay, so what I should do now is try to handle the error state, which is basically straightforward. I'll do an if error, which is if I pass error from here. Then what I will do, I will return error occurred, try again later, right? So this is me handling my errors. If error happens, this is what I expect, else I get my data from my API and show it. So what I have done here is simple. Now I don't need to bring this client side use effect and use state anymore. So what I've done here is basically call the same API call I did when it was a client side component. I called the same API call, the data I used on my page, I return the data here as a data prop. Then on my page I'm collecting data prop and using it for what I want to do on my page. So if I go to my browser and I visit the route, which is this, if I hit it, if you notice the page, there was no loading, there was no nothing. Let me even refresh. So you see that there was no network call as a matter of fact, because every call that is happening happens on the server, right? So when the call happens, there's nothing like page is loading, you're loading, waiting for data. This is what server-side rendering does for you, right? So in this simple way, we've achieved what we normally achieve with PHP in that sense, or Laravel in that sense, but with NEXTJS. In that sense, data still comes as we expect, and then it is loaded together with the page, with the HTML of the page itself at once. So I don't know if this is clear. Now NEXTJS has other functionalities aside server-side rendering, but this is like the most important thing that NEXTJS tries to achieve. And with this, you solve a lot of performance issue, a lot of remounting issues, a lot of things that could have caused issue on your page. So let me know if you enjoyed this and you understood every part of it. If you have any question, just drop it on the chat. I'll be willing to answer them and get responses. So thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.